Hi, class. How you doing? All right, week 4 midterm project. I want to go through this a little bit, and I'm going to do a quick little tutorial here. But I notice that the tutorials are getting less and less detailed and complex as we move through the class. And the reason being is because you're cultivating your skills. Therefore, I shouldn't need to show you everything from scratch. So that's, in case you're wondering, that's why the videos are getting, the tutorial videos are getting less and less detailed. As you cultivate your skills, um, the videos are becoming less detailed, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at what we have this week. So this week's, last week you would have submitted your proposal for the project, right? So you have, presumably have all your assets in place. So what we're going to do is we're, of course, going to illustrate, we're going to create a narrative, a visual narrative, and it's based around this digital portrait of an individual. Okay, so in the announcements, there's a few videos in there, tutorial videos on how to create a digital portrait based on a photograph of an individual. So once you decide what technique you want to use, you'll just go ahead and create the portrait. Okay, so using a photo of a person, it illustrates their face, body. Now remember, portrait, if you look up the definition of portrait, it's shoulders up. So if you want to include the body, get with me and just let me know what your plan is, so we can just make sure that we're pointed in the right direction. Otherwise, let's just assume that portrait means from the shoulders up or a full face shot, right? Okay, so you're gonna use a photo to illustrate their portrait, and then you're gonna include 4 more additional elements in the composition to tell the story of the individual. So we need 5 or more components, elements, photos, illustrations, and or paths. That is the it's the illustration itself, and then 4 more additional elements. Okay, so we have the use of 1 gradient, and then adjustments to opacity to a minimum of 1 element. Okay, again, this is 8.5 by 11, or I will be glad to accept 11 by 8.5. Okay, so let me show you how I would set this up. All right, so I've got this started right here. Okay, so basically this is the digital portrait of Steve Jobs, and I had used this as an example a little bit earlier. So this is the digital portrait of, this is based on a photograph, right, and employing some techniques. And as I said, to reinforce that there are techniques in the video announcement. And I'm sorry, there are video tutorials for different techniques in assembling and creating a digital portrait based off a photograph, and those are located in the course announcement. Okay, once we have our illustration in place, note the background, note that gradient in the background. So I've got the illustration, I've got the gradient in the background. Right now I've got 2 elements there. These are just like Apple devices, right? Now, I know Apple doesn't make headphones, but I'm just doing this just kind of quickly so you get an idea of how to do this. So basically, I've got this, I've placed this here, and I'm just kind of following the contour of his head. I don't really want to interfere too much with his shadow, so I'm going to reduce that a little bit right there. Okay, looking good, looking good. Okay, so there's 2 elements, right? So what I would do now is I would just create 2 more illustrations, and I would place one here and one here, all right? Then there's another requirement that says adjustment to opacity to a minimum of 1 element. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another element, okay? So basically, I've added these. This is the illustration in the background now. I've added these by either placing them or dragging and dropping, right? And I've demonstrated both techniques in previous videos. So what I want to do now is I want to take this logo, right? And I'm just going to go ahead. I've already masked out the background here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this logo, and I'm just going to grab it, and I'm going to move it right over here into this composition. Okay, and then we're going to move it right down there. Okay, and we can even reduce that just a little bit. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and adjust the opacity here as required here in the adjustment to opacity in 1 element. In order to decrease the opacity of this as indicated in the assignment instructions, I'm just going to come over here in Illustrator, and I'm just going to select the Apple logo, and I'm going to open up my properties menu, and that's available through the menu across the top of the screen. Go to Window, click Window, and come down to Properties right there, and that'll open your properties. Now what we're looking for right here is opacity. So with the apple selected, I'm just going to come down here and I'm just going to reduce opacity. Okay, looking good, huh? Looking great. So we get rid of that, come here, click off the artwork, and there you have it. Isn't that gorgeous? So that's the technique that we would use. Okay, so basically the idea is that you're going to create an illustration, a portrait of an individual. Then you're going to create 4 or so illustrations that kind of summarize the accomplishments of this person. Now remember, it's a digital narrative. We're telling a story. Okay, so it's a visual narrative. So we got Steve Jobs, and we got presumably 4 Apple products illustrated. Okay, same technique with the circle background. I would put 2 more over here, all right, and then I just used this little logo and I reduced the opacity. Note the gradient in the background. Now we already know how to create gradients, right, from previous lessons. So that's it, guys. That's what you do here, and that's what we'll be looking for. So if you have any questions at all, please get with me as soon as you possibly can. Thank you very much.